She refused the human's advice. So now she's paying the painful price. Commander Derek Frost didn't sign up for babysitting duty. Yet here he was piloting a Class 4 interstellar transport across the Vega sector with the most insufferable passenger he'd ever encountered. The military had promised him action, adventure, and purpose after the Rielian conflict. Instead, they'd assigned him to escort a spoiled alien diplomat's daughter to Thermote desert world of Araxis. How much longer? Kira Talani asked for the 5th time in an hour, her orange-tinted skin practically glowing with impatience under the ship's lights. Her silver hair cascaded down her shoulders as she leaned over his pilot's chair, invading his personal space. With a scent like exotic flowers and spice. Still 6 hours. Derek replied through gritted teeth, his muscular frame tense beneath his form-fitting gray combat suit. Just like when you asked 5 minutes ago. Kira huffed her full lips, forming a perfect pout. This transport is archaic. My father's personal shuttle could make this journey in half the time. Then you should have taken Daddy's shuttle, Derek muttered, focusing on the navigation console. What was that? Her amber eyes narrowed dangerously. Nothing, Lady Tani. He straightened his posture, military training kicking in, despite his irritation. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in the passenger quarters. I've heard the entertainment system is adequate. Kira laughed to sound like wind chimes that somehow managed to be both beautiful and condescending. I've exhausted your pathetic collection of human media. Your species has such primitive tastes. Derek bit his tongue. 3 more days of this assignment, then back to real military work he could endure. He had survived the vacuum of space for 90 seconds during the Battle of Proxima Centauri. He could survive one entitled alien. Princess? An alarm blared, suddenly red lights flashing across the cockpit. Derek's training kicked in instantly, his hands flying across the controls. What's happening? Kira demanded, her arrogance replaced by genuine concern. Engine malfunction, Derek replied, his voice calm despite the chaos. We're losing power to the main thrusters. We need to make an emergency. Landing on that, Kira pointed to the view screen showing the approaching planet Araxis, their destination. But they were approaching. Too fast and at the wrong angle, better than the alternative. Derek engaged the emergency protocols, the ship shuddering violently as it entered the atmosphere. Strap in now. For once, Kira didn't argue. She slid into the co-pilot seat, securing the harness. As Derek fought to control their descent, the ship groaned in protest, external temperature readings climbing dangerously. We're coming in hot. Derek announced, his strong hand steady on the controls. Brace for impact. The transport skidded across the desert surface, kicking up massive clouds of reddish dust. Metal screamed against stone as the ship finally came to rest, tilted at an awkward angle against a massive rock formation. Derek ran a quick systems check, life support intact, hull integrity at 68%, in communications damaged but repayable. He unbuckled his harness and stood, his imposing height filling the cockpit. Could have been worse. Kira unstrapped herself, smoothing down her light gray top and adjusting her tight-fitting shorts. So we're stranded temporarily, Derek corrected, grabbing an emergency kit from beneath the console. We're actually not far from the capital city, maybe 2 days' journey on foot. I can repair the emergency beacon, but it might take time for rescue to arrive. He pulled out 2 environmental suits, tossing one to Kira. Put this on. Araxis might look like a standard desert, but it's home to some of the most dangerous flora in the sector. Those cacti have spines that can pierce standard body armor. Kira caught the suit, but immediately wrinkled. Her nose. This is hideous, and it smells like human sweat. It's clean, Derek assured her, already pulling his own suit over his combat gear. And it will keep you alive. The Araxis needle cactus is notorious. Its spines contain a neurotoxin that can paralyze within minutes. Kira tossed the suit aside with a dismissive flick of her wrist. I'm not wearing that thing. My skin is sensitive to synthetic fabrics. Besides, we're just going outside to assess the damage, right? Derek sighed, running a hand through his light brown hair. Your funeral, Princess, don't say. I didn't warn you. I'll just be a minute, Kira announced, sauntering toward the ship's exit hatch. I want to feel real sunlight on my skin after days in this metal box. Derek watched her with growing exasperation. The tight-fitting shorts she wore accentuated her curves in ways that were difficult to ignore, but her stubbornness was quickly overshadowing any attraction he might have felt. Last chance, he warned, holding up the protective suit. Those cacti ain't just decorative, they're evolutionary killing. Machines, Kira rolled her eyes. My species evolved on a world far harsher than this dustball. We're naturally resilient to most toxins. Your funeral? Derek muttered, securing his own helmet. The hatch opened with a hiss, releasing a blast of hot, dry air. Kira stepped out confidently, her silver hair gleaming in the harsh sunlight of Araxis's twin stars. Derek followed, closely behind his eyes, constantly scanning their surroundings through his helmet's protective visor. The ship had carved a deep furrow in the red sand, ending in a small clearing surrounded by clusters of tall blue-tinged cacti. Their spines glinted menacingly in the sunlight, some nearly 30 centimeters long and as sharp as surgical needles. Kira gestured around. Perfectly safe. You humans are so... Her scream pierced the desert silence as she backed directly into a cluster of needle cacti. The spines penetrated her clothing with ease, embedding themselves in the soft flesh of her thighs and buttocks. Don't move, Derek commanded, rushing to her side. Every movement drives them deeper. Tears welled in Kira's amber eyes as she froze in place. It burns, get them out. Derek carefully guided her away from the cacti, supporting her weight as her legs began to tremble. I warned you, he said, his voice a mixture of concern and frustration. Let's get you back inside. Once in the ship, he laid her face down on the medical cot. I need to remove those spines immediately. The neurotoxin spreads quickly. Just do it, she hissed through clenched teeth. Derek retrieved the medical kit and cut away the fabric around the embedded spines. He tried to maintain clinical detachment as he exposed the orange-tinted skin of her lower body, now marred by dozens of blue spines. This will hurt, he warned, applying topical anesthetic spray. It already hurts you. Her insult dissolved into a gasp as he extracted the first spine with medical tweezers. Stay still, he instructed, his voice gentler now. The more you move, the more the toxin spreads. For the next 20 minutes, Derek worked methodically, removing spine after spine. Kira's complaints gradually subsided, replaced by occasional whimpers that stirred something protective in him despite his irritation. Almost done, Hashered her, noticing with growing concern that her skin was developing a bluish tinge around each puncture site. Her breathing had become shallow and her body trembled beneath his hands. I feel strange, she murmured, her voice slurring. Cold, but hot. Derek quickly scanned her with the medical tricorder. Damn it, the toxin's spreading faster than I expected. He administered a broad-spectrum antitoxin, knowing it might not be specific enough for Araxis cacti venom. Stay with me, Kira, he urged, turning her onto her back. Her eyes were unfocused, pupils dilated. Talk to me. Tell me about your homeworld. So bright here, she whispered, reaching up to touch his face. Her fingers traced his jawline with unexpected tenderness. Yori. Not terrible for a human. Despite the situation, Derek felt a smile tug at his lips. High praise from Her Highness. Not a princess, she mumbled, just the important father. Her hand fell away as her eyes fluttered closed. The medical scanner showed her vital signs weakening. No, 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 Derek muttered, administering another dose of antitoxin. Don't you dare die on my watch. He activated the ship's emergency medical protocols, which recommended immediate treatment, with a specific antivenenon available only at settlements or medical facilities. Derek made a quick decision. He couldn't wait for rescue. The nearest settlement was a day's journey on foot, but there was a trading post marked on his maps just a few hours away. He carefully lifted Kira's now unconscious form, surprised at how light she felt in his arms. Her silver hair spilled over his armored forearm and her head rested against his chest. Even in this state, there was something undeniably alluring about her. You just had to be stubborn, he said, softly securing her in the co-pilot seat. He programmed the ship to broadcast a distress signal, then packed essential supplies in the portable medical kit as he prepared to leave. Kira stirred slightly, her eyes opened, halfway glassy. With fever. Derek, she murmured, using his first name for the first time. I'm here, he replied, checking her pulse. It was rapid but steady. Don't leave me, she whispered, her hand weakly grasping his. Something shifted in Derek's chest, a protective instinct he hadn't felt since losing his squad in the Rigelian conflict. I'm not leaving you, he promised, but I need to get help. The antivenin is our only option now. She nodded faintly, her fingers intertwining with his. You're warm. She observed a strange note in her voice. Humans run hot and you're burning up with fever, he replied, concerned. By the flush spreading across her orange skin, always found humans fascinating. She continued, her words drifting, so salient, so passionate. Derek gently disengaged his hand, attributing her unusual candor to the toxin's effect. Save your strength. I'll be back with help before you know it. As she prepared to depart, he couldn't help but notice how vulnerable she looked, so different from the haughty diplomat's daughter who had boarded his ship. Perhaps there was more to Kira Taney than he'd initially thought. Kira floated an acia of blue light, her consciousness adrift between reality and hallucination. The neurotoxin coursing through her system had transformed her perception, breaking down the carefully constructed walls of her mind. Father, she called, out, seeing the stern face of Ambassador Taney materialize before her. I've failed you again. The apparition shook its head disapprovingly, always disappointing. Never measuring up to your brothers. What use is a daughter who cannot even follow simple instructions? Tears streamed down Kira's face as the hallucination shifted. Now she stood before the Taney Council, their judgmental gazes boring into her, unworthy of your bloodline. And they chanted in unison, forever trying to prove yourself. No, she whispered, her dream self sinking to her knees. I am worthy, I am strong. The council chamber dissolved, replaced by the interior of Derek's ship, but this version of the ship was bathed in a warm golden light. And there was Derek standing before her without his armor, his human form radiating a strength that called to something primal within her. You don't have to prove anything to me, Dream. Derek said, his voice deeper, more resonant than in reality. I see you, Kira. Not the ambassador's daughter, just you, the hallucination. Derek approached her, and Kira felt her body respond with an intensity that shocked her. In her culture, attraction was a clinical thing. Partnerships, arranged for genetic optimization and political advantage. What she felt now was raw, untamed, a hunger she'd never experienced. Humans, she murmured as Dream Dirk's hand caressed her face. So primitive in your passion, so free. Is that what you want? He asked. Freedom. I don't know what I want. She admitted a truth she'd never voiced aloud in waking life. The scene shifted. Again now she was running across the desert. Derek beside her, both of them laughing as they escaped some unseen pursuer. The joy she felt was intoxicating. This isn't real, she told herself, even as her dream self reached for Derek's hand. Does it matter? Dream. Derek replied, sometimes the unreal shows us what we truly desire. Kira's fever dreams cycled through scenarios, some terrifying, others tender through them. All Derek remained a constant presence, protecting her, challenging her, seeing her in ways none in her life ever had. In one particularly vivid hallucination, she stood before her father. Derek at her side. I choose him, she declared boldly, not the mate. You've selected him. Her father's face contorted with rage. A human, you would disgrace our lineage for a primitive species. There are not primitive, she countered. They feel everything we've taught ourselves to suppress. They embrace life instead of analyzing it. They're a magnificent. The hallucination shattered, and Kira found herself back on the medical cot alone in the ship. Her body burned with fever. But something else burned within her too. A realization that had been building since she first met the frustrating, captivating human commander Derek. She whispered to the empty ship, come back. Meanwhile, Derek pushed himself across the harsh desert terrain, the portable medical scanner strapped to his wrist, beeping with Kira's increasingly erratic vital signs. The trading post was still an hour away, and the antibon with it. Hang on, he muttered as if she could hear him. Just hang on. His commune crackled with a message from the ship's AI, warning patient, exhibiting elevated hormonal activity consistent with Talani reproductive cycle, possible toxin interaction. Derek frowned. He knew the basics of Talani physiology from his military briefings. Their reproductive biology was typically dormant until activated by specific biochemical triggers. Could the cactus venom have triggered something? He increased his pace, ignoring the burning in his lungs as Araxis's thin atmosphere taxed his endurance. The twin suns beat down mercilessly, but the thought of Kira alone and suffering drove him forward, When he finally reached the trading post, little more than a collection of prefabricated structures huddled against a rock formation, he wasted no time in locating the medical supplier, Araxis cactus antiveninant, Hedimanded, slapping his military ID on the counter. Emergency situation. The trader, a grizzled human with skin leathered by years under the desert suns, raised an eyebrow. Military, huh? What's the Terran Alliance doing in this backwater? Private. Transport mission. Derek replied curtly, the antivenin. Now the trader shrugged and retrieved a small vial of iridescent liquid. This will neutralize the neurotoxin, but any secondary effects are on their own timeline. Secondary effects depends on the species, the trader explained in sum. There's a hormonal response, especially in females of compatible humanoid species. He gave Derek a knowing look. Tani, by any chance? Derek's expression must have confirmed it, because the trader chuckled, thought, so you might want this too. He slid a second vial across the counter, hormone stabilizer, unless you want to deal with a Tani and full reproductive heat. They're quite intense. Derek hesitated, then took both vials. How much, for the Alliance? No charge. Just remember Outpost 37. Next time your superiors are distributing supply contracts. With a nod of thanks, Derek sprinted back toward the ship, the precious antivenin securing his pack. The medical scanner showed Kira's condition stabilizing, but her hormonal readings were spiking in patterns he'd never seen as he approached the ship. A new sense of urgency filled him, not just to administer the antivenin, but to see her again. The realization caught him off guard. When had the annoying diplomat's daughter become someone he genuinely cared about? Derek burst into the ship, Auntie. Venin clutched tightly in his hand. The sight that greeted him made his breath catch. Kira writhing on the medical cot, her silver hair plastered to her forehead with sweat, her orange skin flushed with an almost luminescent quality. Derek, she gasped, her eyes flying open. You came back? Of course I did, he replied quickly, preparing the anthene injection. I said I would. Her hand caught his wrist with surprising strength. You were in my dreams. Derek felt heat rise to his face but maintained his professional demeanor. The toxin causes hallucinations. Hold still, this will help. He administered the antivenin, watching with relief as the medical scanner showed the neurotoxin levels beginning to drop almost immediately. Kira's breathing steadied, and the pained expression on her face eased. Better? He asked, brushing damp silver strands from her forehead. The pain is receding, she confirmed, but then shifted uncomfortably. But I feel a strange hot, like my skin is too tight. Derek hesitated, then produced the second vial. The trader said this might happen. The toxin can trigger hormonal responses in Tani physiology. This will stabilize you. Kira's eyes widened. With recognition, is that a hormone suppressant? Yes, it should counteract the... No! She pushed his hand away firmly. I cannot take that. Derek frowned. Kira, you're experiencing a biochemical reaction to the toxin. This will help. You don't understand, she said, sitting up. Despite her weakness in Talani culture, the reproductive cycle is sacred. To artificially suppress it would be sacrilegious. Our body's natural rhythms are considered the voice of our ancestors, even when triggered by alien cactus venom. Derek asked skeptically. A small smile played at her lips. The cause doesn't matter. Once begun, the cycle must complete naturally. Derek ran, a hand through his hair, exasperated. And what exactly does this cycle entail? Kira's amber eyes met his. A new boldness in them, increased body temperature, heightened sensory awareness, intense desire. She said the last word with a deliberate emphasis that made Derek's collar suddenly feel too tight. I see, he said, trying to maintain his composure. And how long does this cycle last? Typically 3 to 5 days, though. In this case, she glanced at the medical scanner. Think, she said softly, her fingers brushing against his, that I'm about to pay an entirely different kind of price for ignoring your advice. The temperature inside the ship dropped noticeably as the storm intensified. Derek checked the environmental controls with a frown. Powers fluctuating. The sand must be clogging the external solar collectors. Kira hugged herself, shivering, despite her elevated body temperature. How serious is it? If we can't clear the collectors soon, we'll lose life support. Within 12 hours, Derek replied, his military training keeping his voice steady. Despite the gravity of the situation, a sudden flicker of the lights punctuated his assessment, followed by the environmental system shutting down with an ominous whine. "Make that 2 hours?" He corrected, already moving toward the maintenance hatch. "I need to reroute power from the auxiliary systems." Kira followed him, her steps more stable now that the anti-venin had taken effect. "I can help." My father insisted I learn basic ship mechanics, and said to Laney, "Should never be completely dependent on others." Derek raised an eyebrow. "First time I've heard you mention your father without sounding resentful. He's complicated," Kira admitted, kneeling beside Derek as he opened the access panel. "Ambassador Talani expects perfection from his children. My 3 brothers all followed the traditional path. Diplomatic service, arranged marriages to suitable partners, perfect. Tenny lives in you." Derek handed her a tool, their fingers brushing momentarily. Kira's breath caught at the contact. "I'm the disappointment, too emotional, too curious about other cultures, too unsuitable." She focused intently on the power coupling in front of her. "This trip was supposed to be my last chance to prove myself worthy of the Townie Diplomatic Corps." Derek watched her work with surprising skill by delivering you to an arranged marriage, her hands stilled. "How did you know?" "Military intelligence briefing. Your father arranged a political alliance with the Araxis governor Sonder Eric's." Voice remained neutral, but his jaw tightened. "Didn't realize you were being forced into it." "Not forced," Kira corrected, resuming her work. "It's our way. The needs of Tanyan society outweigh individual desires." She glanced at him. "Humans find this concept difficult, I understand." "Damn right we do," Derek muttered. "Marriage should be about choice." About. He trailed off, suddenly aware of how close they were in the confined space. Another power fluctuation sent the ship into darkness, emergency lights casting everything in a soft red glow. The temperature continued to drop, their breath now visible in small clouds. "What about you?" Kira asked softly. "You carry yourself like someone who's lost something." Derek was silent for a long moment, focusing on reconnecting power conduits. "Really in conflict. I commanded a special operations unit. 12 of the best soldiers in the Alliance. We were ambushed during a routine patrol." His voice grew distant. "I was the only survivor." Kira's hand covered his, stopping his work. "I'm sorry, I should have seen the sign, should have protected them better." The admission seemed torn from him. "That's why I took this transport assignment. Needed time away from combat decisions." "You blame yourself for something beyond your control," Kay observed, "just as I blame myself for not being the perfect Talani daughter." Their eyes met in the dim red light, a moment of perfect understanding passing between them. Derek became acutely aware of her proximity. The subtle scent of her skin, the way her silver hair gleamed even in the low light. A violent shudder ran through the ship as a particularly strong gust battered the hull. The temperature plummeted further, and Kira couldn't suppress a shiver despite her elevated body temperature. "We need to conserve body heat," Derek said, his training taking over. "The emergency blankets in the crew quarters won't be enough alone." Kira nodded, understanding his implication. In Tani culture, sharing body heat is considered an intimate act reserved for family or mates. "In human culture, it's called survival," Derek replied. Though his quickened pulse suggested otherwise, they finished the temporary power reroute and returned to the crew quarters, where Derek pulled out the emergency thermal blankets. The ship's temperature had dropped to near freezing. And even with his military conditioning, Derek felt the cold seeping into his bones. Kira hesitated only briefly before sitting beside him on the narrow bunk. "Your human practicality is admirable," she said, a new note in her voice as she pressed against his side. Derek wrapped the thermal blanket around them, both his arm naturally falling around her shoulders. Her skin was hot to the touch, her Talani physiology, and the toxins effects creating a stark contrast to the cold air. "You're burning up," he observed with concern. "The cycle," she explained, her voice a near whisper. "It intensifies with proximity to a compatible mate." The implication hung in the air between them. Derek found himself studying her face, no longer the haughty diplomat's daughter but a woman, caught between worlds just as he was caught between his past. Whatever future awaited, is that what I am? He asked, softly. "Compatible." Kira's amber eyes met his, vulnerability and desire mingling in their depths. "Biologically, Tani can reproduce with humans. It's rare but not impossible culturally." She trailed off. "Culturally?" I'm beneath your station, Derek finished for her. No, she corrected him firmly. Culturally, you're forbidden because you represent everything Tanni are taught, to suppress passion, spontaneity, choosing one's own path. Her hand came to rest on his chest, feeling his heartbeat. The very qualities I've always secretly admired. The ship creaked around them, the storm's howl, a distant backdrop to the tension building. In the small space between them, Derek found himself leaning closer, drawn by something more powerful than the cold or the circumstances. He began, his voice. Ro, your arranged marriage would be impossible. She finished, Tanni made for life. Derek, once the bond is formed, it cannot be broken or replaced. The weight of her words hung between them. What had begun as a simple transport mission had become something far more complicated, a choice that would alter both their future, irrevocably. I should warn you, Derek said, his hand gently brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. Humans can be stubborn about the people they care about. If we do this, I won't just walk away when we reach the capital. Kira's lips curved into a smile that transformed her entire face. Then, perhaps ignoring your advice about the protective suit wasn't entirely a mistake. As their lips finally met, the ship's systems hummed back to life around them, warmth gradually returning to the cabin. But neither of them noticed, lost in a different kind of heat entirely. Morning arrived with startling clarity on Araxis. The storm had passed during the night, leaving behind a transformed landscape. Dunes, shifted rock formations exposed, and the ship partially buried in fine red sand. Derek woke first, momentarily disoriented by the weight of Kira curled against him. Silver hair spilled across his chest. Hero-range tinted skin, warm against his. The events of the previous night rushed back, bringing with them a mixture of contentment and concern. He gently extricated himself, careful not to wake her. The ship's systems had stabilized overnight, but the diagnostic panel showed significant external damage. They'd need to make repairs before attempting to reach the capital. Kira stirred, her amber eyes opening slowly. For a moment, she simply watched him, a vulnerability in her expression he'd never seen before. No regrets? He asked, softly. She stretched, cat-like and graceful. Tanni don't believe in regrets, only in consequences. Her lips curved into a smile. Though I admit the consequences of ignoring your advice about the protective suit have been unexpected. Derek laughed. The sound rich and genuine, that's one way of putting it. He returned to the diagnostic panel, frowning at the readouts. We've got work to do. If we want the ship flying again, the main thrusters are clogged with sand and the communications array needs realignment. Kira joined him, wrapping the thermal blanket around her shoulders. How long? A day, maybe two. He glanced at her. Which means we'll reach the capital just in time for your arrangement. The unspoken question hung between them. Kira's expression grew serious. I can't go through with it now, she said quietly. Even if we hadn't, Tanna, bonding is irreversible. Derek, what happened between us last night formed a connection that can't be undone. Derek felt a weight lift from his shoulders, replaced immediately by a new concern. Your father won't accept that easily. No, she agreed, he won't. They dressed and began repairs, working side by side, under the punishing twin suns. Derek was impressed by Kira's technical knowledge and determination. The spoiled diplomat's daughter was revealing hidden depths with each passing hour. By midday, they'd cleared the thrusters and were working on the communications array, when Kira suddenly doubled over, a wave of nausea hitting her without warning. Derek was at her side instantly, supporting her as she swayed. I'm fine, she insisted, though her orange skin had palled to an alarming amber hue. Just the heat. Derek guided her back into the ship, concern etched on his features. Let me scan you, the toxin might be having delayed effects. She didn't resist as he ran the medical scanner over her trembling form. The results made his eyes widen. That's impossible, he muttered, running the scan again. What is it? Kira asked, her voice small. Derek looked up, his expression a mixture of shock and wonder. According to this, you're pregnant, but it's only been hours since we. Kira didn't appear surprised, merely placing a hand on her abdomen. Tanni, reproductive biology is accelerated compared to humans, especially during a proper cycle, and the toxin may have enhanced the process. She met his gaze steadily. This is why our reproductive cycles are considered sacred. They're remarkably efficient, Derek sat heavily beside her, processing the implications. A baby? Our baby? Yes. Kira watched him carefully in Tani culture. This would cement our bond beyond any question. No one, not even my father, could interfere, and in human culture. Derek said slowly, taking her hand, it means I'm not going anywhere. Relief flooded her. Features, you're not upset, surprised. Yes. Terrified, definitely. He smiled, squeezing her hand, but upset. No, somehow this feels some right. Kira's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I never expected to find this with you, with any human. My people speak of humans as primitive, ruled by emotions rather than logic. Yet your emotional nature is what draws me to you, and your logical nature is what keeps me grounded. Derek replied. Maybe that's the point, we balance each other. They shared a moment of quiet understanding before returning to the practical matters at hand. The pregnancy, complicated things Kira would need, proper medical care, and they needed to reach the civilization sooner rather than later. By sunset, they'd completed the essential repairs. The ship wouldn't win any beauty contests, but it would fly as they prepared for departure. Derek received an incoming transmission. The first since the storm cleared. Commander Frost barked a familiar voice. This is General Harrington. Report your status immediately. Derek exchanged a glance with Kira before responding. Sir, we experienced technical difficulties and were forced to make an emergency landing. Repairs are complete and will resume course to the capital tomorrow morning. Is the Talani ambassador's daughter